Welcome to Unscripted Coding and welcome to the Gemini era. Today, of course, we're talking about Google Gemini, which is their latest LLM AI model. And what we're going to do today is play around with it in the Google AI Studio, just get a sense of what it's capable of and even how it compares with OpenAI in some very, very brief tests. Then we are going to look at how you can run it in Python, what the code is and how it looks like. And that's going to be the end of it. Now, Gemini came out literally today as I'm filming, and you're going to see this, the day after. So very, very quickly after Gemini. And I'm sure you're going to see a lot of benchmarking, a lot of tests, and a lot of changes over time to Gemini. But let's go back. What is Gemini? Well, Gemini is Google's latest LLM model. It is meant to compete with OpenAI's GPT models. The big thing about Gemini that stuck out to me, actually, is that it is multimodal. That is true with GPT-4 as well. But this means that the AI model is able to take in text, obviously, which everyone is doing, but it also takes in images, video, audio, and code. This may not seem like a big deal because GPT-4 can do that, albeit nothing with video and audio yet. But the big reason why it's so surprising is that Gemini is offering this in their Pro model, which is a different configuration. It opens up new possibilities that weren't available with OpenAI APIs before. The other really big thing is that Google is claiming Gemini Ultra is competitive with GPT-4. Now, this is something that we can't know about yet because Gemini Ultra isn't out. Gemini Pro is out, but not Ultra. So these are just claims from Google, and we've seen a lot of other models that claim to be very competitive, that rank better in benchmarks, but in reality don't feel as realistic or as capable. But let's go back to the different models first. There is Ultra, Pro, and Nano. Ultra, we don't know about it yet. That's going to be early 2024. So just in likely a month or two away. This one, the Ultra model competes with GPT-4 competitively, if we believe Google's claims. And the Gemini Pro model is their mid-tier model, which competes with GPT 3.5 competitively. Now, if you don't know what 4 and 3.5 means, the short way of looking at it is Gemini Pro is like ChatGPT free version. The Ultra is like ChatGPT Pro or paid version. There is a pretty substantial gap in its capabilities. The last model is actually the most interesting one, and I'm sad to say I can't test it out. But the Nano model is similar to Meta's Llama at 7 billion parameters. It means that, far fewer parameters. It's not in the hundreds of billions or trillions like other models. It is 7 billion parameters, keeps the file sizes small, keeps the runtime short, and allows it to be run on a smartphone. That is a game changer. It is obviously not going to compete with GPT-4 in writing whole novels, but if you're writing short paragraphs, short emails, having it run on your phone locally, don't have to worry about data privacy, internet connection, security, none of that. You can just run it right on your phone very efficiently. Is going to be pretty exciting. So Gemini Nano is going to Google Pixel 8 Pro phones as the first test, and perhaps to other phones in the future. All of that is to give you quick context here. Today we're all about the Pro model because that's all we're getting access to through API or through the studio. Now, the very first thing I wanted to show you is the Google AI Studio. We can take a look right here and just take one of their sample prompts. And while I'm waiting here, you'll see that this interface is very similar to OpenAI's old complete model. This means that you get one shot. You put your text at the top and then you get the output at the bottom. Whereas most people today are looking at these chat models in which you put an input, you get an output, you put another input, you get another output, and it can kind of reference back to your previous inputs and outputs. Now, the magic behind that is it keeps track of your whole conversation, and each time it's putting your whole history in there. So in theory, you can achieve the same thing with completion, but it's interesting that Google's default is this freeform, which looks to me very similar to the old completion model for GPT-4. You're going to see some similar options here. Temperature, which controls the randomness. You have the output length. But what I think is most interesting, and a configuration that wasn't available with OpenAI, is that you can have Gemini Pro with vision, which means we'll take this sample right here, which means that it can understand photos on the cheaper tier. Let's talk about pricing for a second here. The old GPT-4 was 15 times more expensive than GPT 3.5. Every sentence you run on GPT-4 costs 15 times more than GPT 3.5. Now, we don't know how much Ultra costs or Nano, but the Pro model is similar to GPT 3.5. It is roughly 15 times cheaper than GPT-4. It's actually more cheaper. It's actually cheaper because it's cheaper than 3.5 by a little tiny bit. But this is really important as you start scaling to lots and lots and lots of different uses. And most importantly, this is a configuration that wasn't available in OpenAI. If you wanted anything that understood pictures, you had to use GPT-4. That means all your text is a lot more expensive, and photos themselves are very expensive. In this case, there's nothing wrong with the logic or the ability for the model to understand the photo. It's taken in New York City, tells me a little bit about New York City. What I'm saying here is with Gemini Pro Vision, you are getting GPT 3.5 prices, and the image is actually cheaper than GPT-4 as well, allowing you to count per image. The cost is roughly the same as a low-resolution image on OpenAI. So Google's just doing it cheaper across the board when you compare to OpenAI's models. I am going to just delete this and have one more right here, just because I think having the Pro and Vision connected together is opens new doors for new startups, because it allows you to hit a price point far cheaper, giving you that vision model. Okay, so this is chat completions, okay? Of course, GPT Vision also has the chat prompt. And so here is where you can say, hi, get a response from the model, and ask, who are you? And I always like asking this question here. Just to see the flavor of the large language model. So in this case, it's quite verbose. My purpose is to help people with their writing. Gives you a little bit more color than the one from OpenAI. I am going to clear this off and ask, can you write a very short fictional description of an eagle flying over the sea. And keep in mind, I am using GPT 3.5 right now to keep it fair game. Here I am going to ask the same thing. High above the restless expanse of the sea, a majestic eagle soared with effortless grace. Its massive wings, spanning wide, caught the warm currents, lifting it higher into the vast cerulean sky. That's really not bad, but I want to show you quickly GPT-4. Generally speaking, GPT-4 feels a bit more creative, bit more free with its ability to use the English language. And so right off the bat here, with wings outstretched, the eagle soared effortlessly above the undulating sea, its sharp eyes scanning the surface for a glimmer of movement. It's a much more striking description on GPT-4. And this is where we're going to look at Gemini Pro. In the realm where sea meets sky, a majestic eagle soared. Its mighty wings, vast as sails, cleaved through the celestial expanse. The sun's golden rays burnished its proud feathers, gleaming against a black backdrop of endless blue. Not as striking as GPT-4. I think it's an improvement over GPT 3.5. So, you're going to see lots and lots of tests online. I'm sure you're going to see a ton of them very soon. But from my very short non-scientific tests, I definitely rank Gemini Pro to be a little bit better than 3.5 on the various things I've asked. So let's do one last one. Can you write me a farewell email? And I will do the same here. Can you write me a farewell email? And over here, it's quite lengthy, but together we have accomplished great things, and I am grateful for the knowledge, blah, blah, blah. Pretty generic here. And this one, GPT-4, just a little more poetic as well. Okay, so let's get to the coding part of this. You will recognize this very, very quickly. First of all, we have to pip install Google Generative AI. I have done that out of convenience already. And then you import it. You put in your API key, which I need to just copy and paste here. As usual, I am going to delete this key right after, so you don't need to bother trying to copy it. And then you have your general config. I'll talk about the safety settings in a moment, but you'll see that you create the model, you enter the configuration and the safety settings. I think you can leave this out with the default, but the history is very, very similar to how OpenAI does it. You have a role, you have the content, and it's a long-running list of the entire history of the conversation over and over and over. From there, we can just put thanks, keep going, and we can ask it to keep writing the next sections here. So I am going to just run here and run this on the side and wait for a response. But while we're doing that, the last major advantage that Gemini Pro presents is the safety settings. What I find, sorry, I'm just mixing things up here. First of all, it keeps going. It's a cleaner API than OpenAI. It's a cleaner Python implementation than OpenAI. I feel like it's easier to get the code started. It just reads simpler. So there's that going for it. And of course, it does run the sample. But what I wanted to say is that the safety settings, go back to the page here, is a massive change in stance compared to OpenAI. Now, if you've ever tried to put a lot of stuff through OpenAI, eventually OpenAI will tell you, no, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. When it crosses certain boundaries. And in this case, these are great examples. If there's harassment, hate speech, sexually explicit text, dangerous content, OpenAI may very well block it. And I have always found OpenAI to be quite conservative. Now, I've mentioned this before, but I am a lawyer day to day, and so naturally you do see emails with hate speech and harassment. And you know, I like to think I have legitimate reasons to look at it, to run it through a system, to do things with it. But OpenAI just takes this blanket approach of, no, that is not allowed. We're just going to block it and say we're not completing the text. It's frustrating. And where it's been really frustrating for me is the GPT-4 vision when you upload images. It is so incredibly strict that if you put any sort of famous people, it starts trying to get rid of it. If you put anyone showing any sort of skin, even like a t-shirt like I'm wearing right now is apparently suggestive. It's been really hard, and it's been finicky. I'm not saying every picture where I'm wearing a t-shirt it gets flagged, but it's so sensitive that it does at times. Google gives you the option of just turning these off. Now you do, when you sign up to all sorts of agreements saying you're not going to abuse this, you're not going to use this, you know, say for the purposes of disinformation, you're using it for legitimate reasons. I don't know how this will pan out for Google, but they have clearly allowed themselves to take more of a risk than OpenAI, and I, as a developer with legitimate good intentions, think this is very, very useful. I don't know if they can keep going forever. I feel like somebody is going to abuse this and somebody is going to screw it up for everyone. But in the meantime, you are able to basically block very, very, very few things on Google AI Studios. And I have earlier today run a number of images in which OpenAI would catch it, and Google, once the safety settings are down, wouldn't catch it. So, couple advantages to using Google. I feel like Gemini Pro is a real competitor to OpenAI 3.5 and offers just something a little bit different. Now, do I think this is going to dominate and destroy OpenAI? Definitely not. GPT-4 is still the gold standard. It is offered through Microsoft as well. Just lots of options to make OpenAI very, very attractive. But Gemini is not a flop, unlike their previous LLM. It's accessible, it's easy to use, it's good quality, it offers something different from OpenAI. Lots of good reasons to try it out. So I hope this was a great overview for you to see what it can do and where it sits. And I'm sure we are going to learn a lot more about OpenAI and, Google Gemini in the coming weeks and months as more people tinker with it, benchmark it, build new things with it. So, thanks for watching, and I will see you next week for our next project.